Good evening, I'm Yodit, and this is Making the Case. We start tonight in Seminole County, Florida, where a 38-year-old black man, Rocky Rudolph Jr., is charged with attempted first-degree murder, among other charges. After what started off as a routine traffic stop in 2019, police body cam video shows a sheriff's deputy pulling a gun on Randolph after accusing him of smoking marijuana, at which point Rudolph speeds off, not realizing he's dragging the deputy with his car. Here's a portion of that body cam footage.
Mr. Rudolph, yes, sir. Is there any reason why there would be a faint of weed coming out of your vehicle?
I'm joined now by criminal defense attorney and counsel for Rudolph, Mark O'Mara. Thanks for coming on, Mark.
Sure, it's good to be here.
Oh, man. Okay, so Rudolph was initially pulled over for what, overly tinted windows? Was this a pretextual stop? So,
yeah, too dark a tint in his window.
Would you say that? But Mark, we often see in these cases these pretextual stops. How does the accusation about your client smoking a blunt and the officer claiming to smell weed play into the stop?
Well, it starts with the tint, and then if you watch the whole video, for 7 minutes, he's having my client come up with his license, which he had, valid, registration, which he had, valid, didn't have his insurance card with him, but he was able to find it on his phone. So for 6.5, 7 minutes, the officer is at the window interacting with Mr. Rudolph, and then all of a sudden, 7 minutes into it, now there's the smell, the faint smell of pot. Again, one of those tests, those pretextual stops that we hear about a lot as criminal defense attorneys. And then you can see Mr. Rudolph. I don't even need to explain his behavior. You tell me what's going through Mr. Rudolph's mind when that officer is there, and why the officer wrapped his arm around a seatbelt. I don't get yet, but that's right. What led to 7 shots and these murder charges.
Now, walk us through the first moments of the stop, where the banter between your client and the deputy appears to be pretty friendly.
And it was. Now I don't know, I don't know if that's the officer, trying to keep him at ease or what's going on, but absolutely, when he first pulls him over, Rocky,
out his gun and starts screaming and yelling at your client.
Well, first of all, nothing should lead to any officer, this or anyone else, pulling out a deadly weapon. He is being stopped for tint. He knows who he is because he has his license and registration. He knows it's valid. He decides, for whatever reason, to almost what I would call cowboy onto the car. He's actually now stands on the running board of the Escalade and wraps his arm around the seatbelt, violating, in my opinion, every protocol. You never do that, just like you're not supposed to shoot into a car. And he's doing all of this, why? Because in the worst of circumstances, Mr. Rudolph is taking off with a pot charge. It should never have escalated to that point by the officer's actions.
Okay, so I just saw the part where the officer was being dragged by the car, which we'll get to that in a few. Now, I think most of us can understand why a black person in a car with a cop leaning through the window, yelling and screaming while holding a gun to his face, might speed off. Can you tell us why your client acted in the manner that he did? Because, I mean, that would be my assumption, but why?
Look,
why did he pull off?
Look, in a textbook, in some schoolyard or some schoolhouse, you're supposed to stop, listen to the officer. He says stop, you stop the car. But in the harsh reality of 2020, 2019, with what we know is going on the streets and the unfortunate lack of trust for law enforcement, when Mr. Rudolph is there, in his mind, 7 minutes of trying to comply with everything he can do to comply with the officer's request, and then it turns into maybe you have pot in the car. Then if you grab my seatbelt and I sit in my car, that's an aggressive move, in my opinion. I'm probably going to react to it, and I'm not a young black male looking down the barrel of a .45 caliber. So yeah, I'm sure that it was very frustrating for Mr. Rudolph to do exactly what he did, was decide, I could die here, I have to leave.
Mm-hmm. Especially when everything else, like you said, fails. We've tried to comply and people still end up dead. Okay, so now the deputy is dragged by the car, but he's not seriously injured. Nonetheless, Rudolph is charged with attempted murder in the first degree. Under Florida law, that would mean your client had the intent to murder the deputy, which is generally difficult to establish. Explain under what theory the state could prove that charge.
Well, I think the theory that they're going under is, and I'm going to get flack for saying this, white cop shoots black guy, has to charge him with a massive amount of crimes to justify the shooting. And that's really, I think, why we're here. But I guess what the state is going to say is his decision to drive the car when he was on the running board put him at risk, and it was intentional. I think it's an overcharging of the case, and I think it's done because they are covering for the officer's bad decision to pull out and discharge 7 shots into that car.
Mark, I want to show you some video that went viral of a case in Minnesota from April where a white man who refused to wear a mask in a store repeatedly hit a police officer on the head with a hammer while dragging him with his car.
Oh my God. Oh, hell no. The cop is on there!
Now, Mark, in that case, he was charged with assault, not attempted murder, especially given the fact that he was trying to beat this officer with a hammer. Clearly a double standard. Talk to me about why.
Well, look, Yodit, you and I have talked about this many times. There is undeniable implicit biases in the criminal justice system, just like there are in the society as a whole against young black males. We can make believe it doesn't. We can put in textbooks that it's not supposed to be there, but it is. So you look at a case like this and say, you know, Mr. Rudolph was treated, it seems, the way he was treated because of the color of his skin. And again, I know I'm going to hear from law enforcement officers about that, but the harsh reality is a pot charge and a tint charge does not lead to the discharge of a firearm under any set of circumstances. Jump off the car. Don't wrap your hand around a seatbelt. I've never seen that before. Don't get on a running board. They train you not to put yourself at risk like that, and then you put yourself at risk, decide it's time to discharge your firearm. They charged him with trying to take away the officer's gun because, as you see, he put his hand in front of the gun, which, quite honestly, I must confess, I would do if I had a gun in my face.
Mark, during the, I understand that the state and the sheriff's office filed a motion to prohibit you from taking a video deposition of the deputy, which would be a normal part of pretrial discovery in this case. What was their reason for that?
Well, the reason that they gave was, you know, this officer could go into undercover, and we don't want his face out there. And under a strange interpretation of Florida's public records law, officers' photographs, like their addresses, are not public record. And I get that, and I understand that. But, you know, the harsh reality is we have body cams all over this state, like all over the country. We have what we used to call perp walks, now, you know, officers talking to TV cameras. And in this very case, there was a videotape of what's the Florida Department of Law Enforcement did their investigation into the shooting like they always do, and that was videotaped for an hour. So, you know, I think what they really were trying to avoid was having, if I might say, a good criminal defense attorney take a video deposition of this officer where I'm going to question him about the impeachment. And they were trying to protect it in a strange and very strained interpretation of a statute that just doesn't apply. By the way, the judge said, I can take the video, it's going to be under seal until we decide what else should be done with it.
Well, what's next in this case, Mark? Has there been a court date set?
No, we're getting ready for trial. I have now plan to take Deputy Blaze's deposition. I've got a few more witnesses to take. The offer on the table is, in my opinion, outrageous. So unfortunately, because I don't want to try this case, I love trying cases. It's always dangerous for a client. And he has a massive amount of charges that, if convicted anywhere near as charged, he can get a life sentence. For what you just saw in that videotape, he could spend the rest of his life in prison.
Wow. Well, Mark, we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on this case, and hopefully we could have you back to keep our viewers up to date on this. Criminal defense attorney Mark O'Mara, thank you for coming on tonight.